Hi everyone, this is Joy Divergence. I am here to talk with you tonight about yin and yang. This is a not new subject for a lot of people, but maybe the perspective is a little bit. In my journey of finding balance within myself and inner peace, I found that is more focused on an acceptance journey of other people and myself and where they are at in life. Um, there's a lot more to yin and yang as well and stuff as far as like what's more attached to that. But in this area, I would like to talk to you about what I call clearing a path to yin and yang. For breakthrough, starting with myself and stuff is basically the concept that I talk about. Is because if you don't have a clear mind and a clear perception of what's really going on around you, you can really ruin some relationships. And in this particular case, I'm referring to with people and stuff, but you can refer this to in any aspect in life. So if you have relationships with electrical items, let's say you wanted to pulverize them sometimes when they're not working for you the way you want them to, um, and really take a look at that. So in this particular case, um, I was mentioning this of acceptance of myself and where I am at, but also acceptance of others and where they are at in their journey. For this particular case, I am also talking about clearing my debris of my past creates a whole new set of possibilities ahead. Um, as I push my way through the debris of my past, I see a light in the distance, a clearing that is opening up new possibilities, a new way of thinking, a new way of being. A transformative place where I allow myself the room to inhale and exhale, live and love, take time to feel things again, create and give again. Being conscious of what caused my life to spin wildly out of control and my role in it are the first epiphanies I raised my awareness of. So the first one that I mentioned here, for instance, is uh, having a transformative place where I allow myself the room to inhale and exhale. So basically, just relaxation. If you don't have time and space to really relax, or even sleep for that matter, you could be speaking with another individual and be getting very upset, and probably just due to lack of sleep even and stuff like that can really mess with you. Now, if you have a spouse by chance that happens to stay up gaming or just be really loud intentionally or is purposely like doing stuff to keep you awake, well, I hate to break it to you, you probably ought to find some other help besides him in the middle of the night. And or her in that case if it's your wife. I don't know, every person's scenario is different. So the other thing was that to live and love, even laugh, I wanted to put in there. I hadn't quite edited it yet, but to live, laugh, and love. So if you're not living your life, if you're not able to go out of your house, and you're one of those individuals that is like hiding underneath the covers and doesn't really know what to do next, or maybe you're just getting really frustrated with everything around you and are just still learning to take a moment to go outside, or if you have the space in your home, to go and take a break at home if that's where it needs to be done at. And just give yourself that time and space. If you need to, put in some meditation music, like put your headphones on if you need to do it at work. These are just little helpful tidbits that I've learned over time that if I didn't have my peace and my sanity and stuff, I wouldn't be able to do what I needed to. And so, many times, miracles happen every day. And our own heart, our own being, the fact that we are here is a miracle in itself, because the heart that's within us is actually, doctors can't explain it today, even to this day. And I would like to share with you also that the next one that I was talking about was to take time to feel things again. So, and this can go into many aspects in life. Um, and I guess that the major portion that I think about when I think about this is that there is, sorry, trying to balance things here. Um, there are things that when I'm texture wise, we'll start out with that for an example and stuff. Let's say that when you go to feel like a soft blanket versus hard nails that you walk across, or Legos and stuff, like I'm sure that some of us out there have been those individuals who have stepped on Legos and oh my god, does it hurt? And you may want to curse, and you may want to throw a tantrum, and you may want to do a few other things. I don't know. I'm not you, so I can't vouch for you. I know one individual who actually was very resourceful and just knew he needed the Lego itself to be able to pinpoint an acupressure point within his foot that was hurting really badly, and just kept on getting the feeling. He's like, he was just a child, but he's like, I need to play with Legos and stuff, and nobody was really stopping and listening. And so I finally stopped him and asked him and just said, hey, what is it that you really need? Why do you need the Lego? And at first he was just like, well, I want to play. I'm like, okay, well, that's a general response, especially when kids think about stuff that they want to do, is play. Play is a huge one for them. But play doesn't look like the same thing as what everybody else thinks. And so, um, it's funny because I have a person that I work with, throughout the week and stuff, and he'll mention, have fun, play a lot and stuff, and live and laugh and just, enjoy life. And then you got to be able to love life. You got to be able to, embrace that meaning of life, what life means to you. And for me, as I've done a lot of this, I found that there was actually um, some individuals that when they would do these things, it actually uplifted not only us, but it uplifted them like tremendously. But they'd already built this into like a muscle memory practically. Like they didn't even have to think; they just enjoyed life. And for me, for somebody who comes from a past history of dealing with trauma or abuse or anything like that and stuff, I'm like, well, that's great that you have that, but what about me, kind of thing, like how can I get to that point? And they actually showed us. They showed us a lot actually. And then I started doing it repetitively. I started going, 3, 4 times a month, and they were 3-day events. They were seminars at the time and stuff that I was going to, but it was a huge deal to just be able to have that interaction that way, and to finally be able to have something that was rather just empowering. There's no real other way to really put it. It was empowering. A lot of people looked at it as if like, oh, it's too much to handle and everything else. I had my days where I was like that there, but I realized that it was a choice. It was a choice to be overwhelmed or to really take in what they were saying and do it. And for some people, they're just like, well, I need to do it over electronics and stuff first, and then warm up to going and stuff like that. And for me, I dove straight in. I didn't want to do the electronics. I wanted to be there in person. I wanted to get myself out of my home, and sometimes that's what it takes. Is that you take that time and space to get out of your home even. And at that point in my life, it was not it was a miracle that I made it through, I guess, in some days. Some days it was so stressful that one day all I had to do was eat, I think it was Doritos and a pork chop, and I don't know if they were store bought and if they had just extra seasonings that were store bought ones on there, but I had an allergic reaction. At least that's what I thought it was at first. Then I actually found out that I was having a mini stroke, and the doctors kind of just like they cleared out my system. They're like, "Well, you're okay. There's nothing really to worry about here now. Just whatever you were doing before, just don't do it again," basically. And it wasn't just the food, though. It was living in a high stress environment, and also what they taught me was known as limiting beliefs that were attached to that. So that's another part of that. So it's like acknowledging that you have these pains, these fears, these doubts, and our ego that likes to just kind of like run the show, so to speak, and just be like, no, that's not what this is, or you like you just your ego gets real big sometimes. Especially if the right button is pushed. Yeah, there's when our ego's in the way, it's like we don't want to be teachable, we don't want to be coachable. So that's a major thing and stuff. So the other thing is that I was mentioning was to take to create and uh, to well, first I was saying take time to feel things again and stuff. So that's not just with like on a physical basis. Doing meditation uh, is a way of doing that as well. And stuff like for me, I had to help my mind calm down, and it was just because it was like constantly running, and I would learn and stuff that my mind just had not been trained to work properly. I had had several traumatic brain injuries and was dealing with a severe, on the severe scale of autism. And I still deal with that daily and stuff, but you can tell that I'm not quite the same person as I used to be. If you'd known me back then, I was one of those individuals that was hiding underneath the covers and ducking away from everybody and not wanting a thing to do with them. And I eventually began to learn that I didn't want that way of life. So one day I kicked off the covers and I said, enough is enough. I'm done. And it wasn't that I was done with life necessarily, it was just that I was done with the mess. I was done with everything, the result that I had in my life. And I was the person who was causing that result. Whether other people, there was other people that, played a part in that, but it wasn't necessarily always they weren't the only factor. It was usually because I was not putting myself in better circumstances. I was living with, just life as it was. But, I mean, I won't go into the details of everything, but it was intense. Enough that I had PTSD from it. Now, I had complex PTSD as well before from when I was a child. And I didn't even start overcoming that, I don't think, until I was able to. My dad would take us out on the weekends to go camping and fishing, and mostly just to get us in touch with nature. And it was a big deal because he was just trying to give us a chance at life, a chance to be able to go and live life. And I could, sounds kind of weird, I guess, with what just popped in my head. But yeah, I could probably, give him kisses on his face and up and down and stuff on his forehead and stuff, and just say thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, like that. I know that sounds like such a little kid thing to do, but it was. It was something that he really was good at doing. Like every other weekend, he made sure to get us out at least that much, if not every weekend. And he would tickle us till we laughed and so hard that we were about ready to pee ourselves sometimes. But then there was other challenges that he had himself. I mean, it wasn't perfect, but it was better than where we came from. You know, people wanted to say, well, this is how life was. And I'm like, well, I'm glad you remember it that way because I don't. I remember so much more. And unfortunately, I'd learned actually that I had had photographic memory and that it was in overwhelm, and because of the PTSD and all these other blockages, I could not utilize that ability very well. In fact, it became very hard to use it. Enough that people began to doubt me throughout life. They just did. They were also had their own stuff showing up for them as well, and stuff like their own memory challenges and their own things that they're just like, no, that's not what happened, is it? No, we were a lot nicer to you. I'm like, there was days you were and days you weren't. I don't think that they really understood what they were doing. And I realized that the people that I was surrounded by was only going to continue to cause me to stay where I was at because they were living in a very similar life pattern where they were either living with complex PTSD before or they were living with PTSD and then plus dealing with all sorts of other crap that I can't even go into here. I mean, I can, but I won't. It's not worth my time and my effort and my energy to do that anymore as much. I'm doing everything I can just to move forward and focus on that because that brings me peace, that brings me happiness, and it helps me to actually be myself more with people. If I go into the stories too much, I realized that when I was brought to um, where I'm at now and stuff with the spiritual community that I'm with now, they have brought me to a point where I began to realize that I was needing to even take a step back further than I was, and I was trying to dive nose deep in, and I kept on getting the feeling to go try to tell my story and everything else. And they're like, well, individuals that I was talking with recently, they're like, well, it seems like more than anything, these individuals that were helping you were trying to just to help you to not focus on your story. And I couldn't understand why. In fact, it became very aggravating at first, and it was just like I wanted them to just leave me alone when it came to that after so long and stuff. But I began to realize that it was them doing their best to help me to focus on the idea of expressing myself, just read back through my music and doing my singing and doing my dancing, and like it wasn't in the average way, granted, and stuff. So like they saw what I liked to do a lot of the time when I was just trying to cope, and would notice that that was my escape route, but that it also helped me. It helped bring me back so that when I went to go interact with people, I was present with them again. And so I utilized it as a coping skill for those things. I also did writing. I also did all these other things that were just I would throw myself into doing these other things instead. But I would do it with the intention of like resolving my issues. Usually, I didn't do it with the intention of just like, oh, I'm just telling a story. No, I wanted to see resolvement in my life, so I started writing things as if I wanted them resolved. I even did something that was along the lines once of what I called lyric novels. But basically, it would help me just to express what I needed, whether it was venting at first, and then it would turn into a transformational, um, a lyric novel, because it was just really long in general. But it became what worked for me. And at first I was actually rather embarrassed about it, and now it's like, no, this worked. Why should I be embarrassed if something worked for me? I worked hard to find this. And just because I'm not doing what everybody else does doesn't mean I should be. I mean, it would be great if I could get to the point of doing what they're doing, but in the meantime, I need to embrace what I can do. And that's part of living life. Loving it, embracing it, and then laughing along the way when you absolutely want to and need to make fun of whatever, the funny stuff that you need to, uh, you know, go Jeff Dunham kind of idea. If you need to really, get some puppets and do little things on the screen there. I mean, heck, maybe that'll be a family activity that we start to do and stuff, is just get puppets and express ourselves with the puppets and stuff and just play. We've done it before when my child was a lot smaller, and now she's old enough that she could actually do that with us if she really wanted to, in other aspects and other ways. Anyways, so moving beyond that, being conscious of what caused my life to spin wildly out of control and my role in it are the first epiphanies I raised my awareness of. Um, so basically, when you're having life just run out of control and stuff, and you're also at the same time seeking answers, understanding what your purpose, your role is, another way I put it at the time, I guess, when I wrote this. Um, when you know your purpose and you actually find what you're supposed to do in that moment, and you can do that for each and every moment until you get to a point to where it's kind of muscle memory that you're just like, well, what's the purpose of me being here in this place at this time? What do I need to be doing here? And the major part that I found with that was that I actually found other people even coming into my path that just were teaching me what to do a little bit differently when I would come and see them and stuff. Like, out of all of my chaos, I found a way to find purpose. And time and again, like since I was a child, like I knew there was purpose. I didn't always know what it was when I was growing up, but I knew it served a big purpose. And when I got to the level that I've gotten to now, it's like a whole new level of just understanding that with everything that we do, if we live with purpose, on purpose, we actually are not, it's not what life is completely about, but it definitely plays a huge role if we allow it to and if we embrace it. It will actually, bring that inner peace a lot faster. And it doesn't always appear that way at first and stuff. When I was starting out with this, I didn't understand. I would watch other people and I would think, I wanted them to be able to see that there was so much more to life, but they were there to show me. Anyways, the other, when I spoke of my role and in it are the first epiphanies I raise my awareness of. What that means is the first ideas that are like coming to your mind, they will raise your awareness. They will bring you into awareness. And about what your purpose is, and also about what you need to do differently to be able to get there. A big part of it is that, for me at least, it's being able to show people that anything is possible. I've survived a lot. There's a lot of people that sit there and say, well, you should be dead. You shouldn't be alive, considering what you've been through. And luckily, I found people that understood actually what it was like to go through some of the things that I went through. And they had been along in their healing journey long enough that it was like, I'm grateful that I got to meet them, because they helped me to see that I was, you know, that there was a better way of looking at it. And it helped me to have, some uh, epiphanies or aha moments or golden nuggets, sometimes, as I like to call them. The next thing, anyways, is that um, shielding oneself creates unconditional space for myself and others, which creates a whole new environment where the possibilities flow through you or myself, even in this case, when I'm talking about this, in abundance, which makes life priceless and infinite. Uh, it is true that we teach people how to treat us. Or, sorry, I put, is it true? But yeah, I kind of answered the question for you. Dang it. I'm not supposed to do that on these. But yeah, is it true that we teach people how to treat us? Another one thing I have on here is saying, I've always trusted that people are innately good, but in reality, I have been the target of anger because I am a soft place to land. So a lot of people would take advantage of that, and over time I became angry and upset and hurt myself, and people didn't understand that and stuff, and so they're like, why are you angry at me? Like, I'm like, well, it's because I've been holding back all this anger and frustration, and I've been succumbing, and I've been doing everything that you told me to do, basically, and not allowing myself to be able to do what I need to be doing. And didn't have the words to even say that at the time, keep in mind. My brain would go off on the fritz, is what I'd call it. Basically, it'd start misfiring, and I wouldn't be able to do what I wanted that way. As I learned to shield myself, the largest part of this process will be treating myself with the respect I want others to treat me with. If this does not happen, I will continue down the same path of self-destructive behavior and deprivation. And this is true for any individual. If they haven't learned to break free of that. The nexus part, the nexus part. Anyways, connection to my highest and best self is the next part. Connecting with my higher self, my spiritual self, will allow me the armor I need to rejoin the world. Today's focus will be clearing a path to Zen. When you wake up this morning, think about past behaviors and how others have treated you. Is there any connection between how others treated Is there any connection between how others treated you and how you treated yourself? If so, think of how you can make positive changes to reteach yourself and others about the treatment you deserve and demand. It's kind of a little out of alignment. The next one is on ponderizing. As I found myself pondering over this, here is what I found. Over time, throughout my life, I have recognized that life is short, but time is endless. I felt that what needed to be said here was, isn't it about time, life, and time met in the middle? Yeah, I probably need to work on this wording a little bit on that one a little bit better. But basically, it's saying that life and time, we need them to meet in the middle somewhere, so that things actually begin to work for us instead of against us. Recently in life, I found myself in what felt like the hot seat. I found myself reevaluating my friends in life, and I also found it is okay to accept my friends where they are at in their journey. However, I found in order for me to respect them at my 100%, I needed to go the direction I am needing to go. Basically, I need to check within myself and be able to say, okay, where do I need to be at this time, because this is not the result I'm looking for. I could stay or go, but I choose to not stay where I wasn't wanted and or needed any longer. And this was around April of 2019, it looks like, which was like 2 years ago. I was still in a location where I could visit with these people, but it just, like, everything kind of just seemed off on the timing. Like, nothing was working out, it seemed, with what they were trying to help me with, or, just these different areas. Another thing I found lately was where I have needed to allow myself to grieve and let go of the responsibility that was not for me to take on, with the lives that were once taken by others who had no respect or regard for the human beings that were taken so long ago. They didn't have respect for life. They didn't have respect for human beings. They, at least not for everybody else's. But they did what they felt that they needed to in order to survive themselves. But what they didn't realize was that they were the person that was with the problem to begin with. And in the process, they destroyed the light. Basically, they destroyed people that were doing their best to do their part, but because their anger, because their pains, their fears and doubts, their ego, everything got so big, mentally, emotionally for them, basically, that they could not handle that answer. They didn't take the time to heal themselves, and so they actually gave a response where it would hurt other people more than it did help them. And it helped them, the individual, actually, I should say, it helped the individual, but it did not help more the larger populace. The more, if you're doing it just for yourself, it can be very destructive. And when you are going to, stand up for a greater cause, usually it's because you're trying to stand up for a larger amount of people, not just yourself. I wanted people to be able to see, even for me, that I wanted them to see what I knew. I wanted them to be able to hear me. I wanted them to be able to understand that all of what we're doing right now is, our outcomes are created from what we're doing and stuff, and so we got to stop and actually plan out things that will work together. And if we're not in a space to do it, man, maybe we're just not right. We're not with the right people. And I realized, that I wanted so much more for mankind. I didn't want to keep on seeing history repeat itself. And I didn't just mean mine. I meant everybody that I was surrounded by. The best way I can put it is that I saw what happened to those that slipped through the cracks to never be seen or heard from again. Whether that was through committing suicide or somebody else killing them. And It was a sad thing to witness. It was harsh. Of course, I had all these feelings about it, and I feel horrible that there were so many lives that were just lost because people could not find a way to work together. And in order to get to the point to where I have, so I can actually start doing that with people and refocus my energy on helping people again, I had to leave. I had to leave all of those individuals that were playing a role of chaos in my life in order to refine myself and to start anew and begin creating a much better life for myself and others. Um, Another thing I found lately was where I had needed to allow myself to grieve and let go of the responsibility that was not for me to take on, with the lives that were once taken by others who had not respect or regard for the human beings that were taken so long ago. Now, the reason I say that is because it's about respect for life. I did just read that, but it's just like you've got to be able to respect your own life, and you've got to be able to respect other people's lives. Now, if somebody else's life is in danger, and you feel like it is your responsibility to do something, I would invite you to make sure you reach out for help first, unless you have to make a sudden, instant thing, like a decision right there in that moment that is to stop somebody from taking somebody else's life or from them taking their own life. But in the meantime, I would really suggest that you take a look in the mirror before it's too late, before somebody dies because of you or because you put yourself in a position where you no longer want to live. You've got to seriously take your life by the reins or the horns or whatever you want to call it and really turn it around. Life is not just for us to rampage over. It's much more than that. I remembered what I learned from it was more of a children's show, just a show at the time, like a kid's cartoon is the way of putting it. Anyways, I remembered what I learned from Avatar: The Last Airbender. The movie is what I actually had gotten this from, so it wasn't the children's show when I actually was experiencing this moment of what I wrote. There is a part where the dragon is telling Aang, the Avatar, how to defeat the Fire Nation. The dragon says to Aang, "You are not dealing with the loss of your people and your responsibility for their deaths. You are stopping yourself from grieving. You're angry. You must let this go. As the Avatar, you are not meant to hurt others. Use the ocean to show them the power of water." Now, the reason I looked at this, I guess, at the time was because at the time I was actually going through a rather emotional state myself. And I was still grieving so much. Like, I couldn't even tell you how much I was grieving. And for how many people. There was countless people that I was grieving for. And this helps me to understand, release the emotion, let everything flow, let your words flow, let everything be a conduit of it that will help be the teacher itself instead of you using it to hurt people. Help it to heal them, help it to show that you're not here for war, you're here for creating peace. You have to create that peace within yourself well enough, though, before you can do that for that many people. Sometimes. And in other times, all it takes is for you to speak up and to stand in your personal power and admit you do. You do have a great love for many people, and if not, maybe all people. But you need to be able to manage your thoughts, your feelings, your emotions, your actions and reactions. And if you can't figure that out and you can't do that, how are you going to be able to react and respond to people appropriately, especially when you want them to be able to see you for who you really are? And some people don't really hold that space because they don't know how to. They never have been taught themselves, so how can they do it for you? At least not well enough that they can do it all the time, sometimes even. Sometimes they can do it within just for a moment. But a lot of the time, they're not usually holding it for us. They're usually dealing with their own crap and don't know how to approach what's going on. They want to be able to resolve your issues, especially when it's the adult. And they're sitting there going, what can I do to help you? Just let me know, please. And you don't have an answer for them because they've never asked that question to you before. And nobody else has. So how are you supposed to respond? You sit there and I guess you can. There are a few different ways to respond. You can either just sit there and say, I don't know. Or you can say, let me get back to you on that. I haven't ever had that question asked to me before. And this can be used with children even. Children can use, if you teach them this response, so that if they're like being over talkative and they can't really find the words to say sometimes, or maybe they're just owning the whole room, but you need them to understand and say, hey, why don't you do this? How about you take a look at this and go, how can I be a part of the solution and not the problem? And then when you have two answers, I want you to come back to me. And when you do, there's a lot more to show with that. But anyways, just due to time, for time's sake and stuff, I've got to wrap this up. But I will continue this at a later time for this lesson. This one's with clearing a path to yin and yang zone. So, thank you, and I hope you can find the information valuable and that it will support you in moving forward. Know that you're loved. Big Bear Head. Namaste.